Okay, it is 6:30 and it is Tuesday, February the 26th, 2009. 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. Welcome to week number four of Drugs and Crime. And that means that the quarter is moving very rapidly. We only have 2 more weeks to go after the completion of this week when all assignments are due this Sunday. So I'm going to spend some time with you going over the assignments. Then I'm going to share with you a few things that you need to be aware of. So let's right here share my screen. And there it is. You're familiar with this. Again, reminding each and every one of you that rubrics are very, very, very important in this course. Reminding you to follow those rubrics. Use those rubrics to check off and make sure that you have satisfied all of the requirements so you can maximize your points. Also, make sure that you notice the APA requirement. In understanding APA, we provide information over here on the left side of the page. There's a guide there. You click on that guide, and it gives you a toolkit and everything you really want to know about APA. So you want to utilize that if you're struggling with APA. It is very, very, very important. This is important not just for this course, but for the college itself. And so it is indicated very clearly in your syllabus, if you have a chance to read it, which I went over it during the open house, and it indicates the importance of APA. And APA, again, goes along with helping you to utilize the transferable skill of information literacy and also integrity and ethics, because you're given credit for the information that you receive. And then your critical thinking is also very important. Again, I remind you, there is a video down here which allows you to look at that video, and it explains more about critical thinking. Critical thinking is very important. So these are right here on the course homepage. Also, I remind you, as it says in the module itself generally, that your textbook is not very important in terms of you writing your papers. What is most important are the sources that you discover from your research. And of course, there is a library and learning resource that's available to you. You could, again, click on guides, and it leads you to the library and learning resource. There is also, again, a place where you can find your guide for School of Justice Studies, and we include that in the assignments. You see it every week. Utilize those. So we move right along to remind you the rubrics are in each weekly assignment, and then there is a discussion post-rubric, and most of you are pretty good with that. You give good content, you give good information, you do them timely. Several of you provide initial posts, which is good. I mean, reply posts, additional reply posts, and then also some of you include citations and references as well. The idea is to keep discussion open so that it's more interesting than just answering some questions. So we are at week 4. So next week we have 1 lecture, and then we have 2 more after that. And of course, your recordings, they include all of this right here, not just YouTube, but this part over here. And then that was week 2, where we had that 2-part, and then of course week 3 lecture. And so at the end of today, you will have the week 4 lecture. So I always make sure that you understand over and over. And if you listen to my lectures, you'll see that there's certain points that I keep talking about. And then I talk about Grammarly. Not many of you have had that problem. You're utilizing the Grammarly resource under the Resources tab, which you already know is at the top, right up there next to your calendar. Let's move my little mug down. There we go. So you got calendar, and you got resources, and you can find information that will be beneficial to you. The idea is for me to keep pointing you to things that will help you to achieve success and to receive good grades in these courses. So these are processes. Your welcome announcement, again, is there. It reminds you again of everything that you need to do. So now let's get right to our week 4 announcement, that our module 4 is on drug-related criminal activity, the law enforcement perspective. And when dealing with the law enforcement perspective, there is something that I'm going to include in this lecture, and I'm going to mention the law as what is going on with it, as to how the law enforcement is operating. And then, so you had chapter 6 and 7 of drugs, crime, and justice, and then complete the activities combating drug trafficking organizations, and law enforcement response to the heroin epidemic. Sounds like the police are outside. So, and then your discussion assignment, forfeiture, which your initial post is due tonight by 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time, and your reply post is due Saturday, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. And then finally complete the written course project, the law enforcement perspective, and then your quiz. And then there's a mid-quarter student survey, if you could complete that as well. All right. So let's go over and take a look at our calendar real quick. Course calendar. And you see this is where we are, right here. It tells your initial post. You click on that, and it tells you forfeiture is what it's about. It tells you your reply post about the same topic. And then it tells you that we're in March as of Saturday with your reply post. So your course project, of course, details are in the module and the rubric. Very, very, very important. That is the key to success. And then, of course, the quiz, which is a time quiz, and you're each familiar with how that operates. All right. So that's where you find it. Again, we're approaching, as we say, in March. You'll see March 15th. The quarter is over. So you'll see, looking at the March calendar, using this week's calendar, 2 more weeks. 2 more weeks. And you want to, it goes very, very fast. All right. So now let's go over to our week 4. And again, there's that drug and crimes course guide that I told you that you can utilize that will help you in this particular course. And all you have to do is click on it, just like I just did, and it opens it up. And it tells you about this, about the discussion post for each of the weeks. It tells you, let's see, my Adobe, I'm not going to go back. I'm going to go back to that. But you want to allow Adobe. Okay, there we go. And then you will see finding articles, newspapers. It explains what the research process is, what will help you. And then notice it talks about citations and it talks about providing the resources. Shows you where you can find information, all the way to cases, and then your sources are credible if you get them from here. All right, and then it gives you some other information. Even again, there's an APA toolkit, which leads you back to something that I showed you a little while ago. I'm not going to log into that, so let's go back to that. But I showed you where you can find that, and then you'll be able to get that. Or you can set up an appointment with an APA tutor by clicking this. If you're having trouble with APA, and it tells you the steps and everything, explains Grammarly and the process what the importance of Grammarly and how to create an account and how to utilize it. And then you can chat with a librarian. And then, of course, you can then set up your time with the tutor as well. So it gives you an opportunity and ability to be able to get help, the writing lab and so forth and so on. So this is included in the module and helps you with your assignments. And so we're dealing with the discussion post, then your quiz, and then your live lecture is due on Sunday, and then again try to do the survey. Okay, so here is your assignment for possible 40 points. That's due Sunday, and it tells you, notice the highlighted, the minimum 3 pages. You'll lose points if you don't do that. And 3 credible, reliable sources. And other than your textbook. There was a student that asked me, he said, well, if I use my textbook, don't I get credit for that? I said, read it again. It says, the idea is we want you to do research. And we want you to use credible resources, not Wikipedia. One student did use Wikipedia. And then be sure to include your citations, as I've talked about. And then again, it leads you back to the course guide and tells you where you can, again, get help for that. So let's take a quick look at the rubric, which I remind you. And the rubric tells you what you have to do. Repeats what I said, at least 3 credible resources. It's a minimum 3 page, not counting the cover page and the reference page. And then this again repeats the APA and the information. Many of you lose points because you don't follow that. Very, 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 very important. Okay. Now, one of the things that I will be sending to you, I don't think I sent it to you, as we leave this section and go into the lesson portion where we deal with the lesson content. Again, it tells you we're going to talk about this, and then we're going to deal with law enforcement response to a heroin epidemic. And I'm going to provide you, and again, this is a course project discussion quiz. I want to give you right now something that I want to make sure that you have a chance to see, and I will send it to you later on today. Give me a minute while I come to it. It is, these are all the courses I've taught, so just hold on. I think it's in page 3. And it might be in page 4. I thought it was in, let's go back to page 3. All right. I think I just skipped it. Oh, here it is. Okay, 3023. And I'm going to open this up for you. And it's upside down. I don't know why it is upside down. Yeah. Let's see. See if I can flip it over. I think I can. No, I thought there was a way. Yeah, there is a way to flip it over. I'm just covering it, I think. This thing always does this to me. Okay. Let's see. There's a way to flip it over, and I can't do it now. But anyway, let's see, view. $30.23. Okay, let me go back. Okay. Let's go back. Stop sharing. And then let's go back to sharing my screen. I think it's going to be back there again. So I want to go back to backwards. Let's go then do this. Okay. For some reason, it's not allowing me to. Let me go back. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing again. Then I'm going to bring up, oh, I know. I just thought about it. There it goes again. I hate this when this happens. Okay. Let's see if we can escape it. Okay, let's go back to, okay, let's go back to this. Okay, I got it back now. Okay, so anyway, I will send that information to you about 3023. I'm going to need to go back and share my screen. Here we go. Okay, and so I have the information. 1 second here. I had it on my desk. Put it away. Give me a minute. Is this it? Nope, that's not it. Let me see if I can look on the side here. I think, hold on a second. Ah, here we go. Okay. I knew it had been moved. So anyway, we're going to talk about that in just a few minutes. Sorry for the delay in that. So now let's get to our issue here. Okay, so you should be aware of the fact that law enforcement is ever dealing with drug trafficking organizations, cartels, and other organizations from all over the world, but focuses heavily on Mexico and China. As you learned a few weeks ago, one of the major kingpins, El Chapo, was indicted and then was found guilty of all 10 counts dealing with this. And so what has happened is that the various governmental organizations, the Drug Enforcement Agency, the Treasury Department, the Border Security, Homeland Security, all work together to deal with programs to fight the organizations that are distributing these drugs. And you should be aware of the fact that in terms of combating it, the trouble that is happening here is that, and problem is that there are so many leaks in the organizations, and I don't mean illegal leaks, but I'm talking about different holes or different ways that these drugs are brought into the country. Be aware that one of the major issues is the bringing in drugs at legal checkpoints. Contrary to what you have heard, and law enforcement has come in and said, the wall will not prevent the problem, because most drugs come through legitimate border locations. You'll discover that if you do any research. If you look at these articles, you will discover very seriously that it comes in fake gas tanks, where cars have it embedded in the body. People wear it on their bodies themselves in terms of belts and things like that. And then there's a new thing. There are tunnels that are being presented that are actually allowing cartels to get these drugs into the United States. And so as a result, there are problems that the DEA and other organizations are having trouble with. And it says here that the Drug Enforcement Administration, or DEA, is the lead agency and fighting against Mexican cartels such as El Chapo and other organizations. And agents are all over the world and involved in investigations. And that it says that, look, listen to what read what it says. It says, agents conducting investigations domestically work to disrupt and dismantle locally operating drug trafficking organizations and those that cross the Mexican border, most often as part of multi-jurisdictional task force. Task force allow officers from various jurisdictions to work together, and I was talking to you about some of them. And there are drug busts that take place in the United States. There are buys, there are wiretaps, and there are other organizational changes. Sometimes individuals are caught, and then they will assist the organizations to fight these drugs and these drug cartels and organizations. I forgot to mention the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosive as one of the organizations that, or we call it, and then ATF, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, that's what I had mentioned earlier, and dealing with the weapons, because there are a lot of weapons, high-powered weapons, that go with these cartels. And as a result, because of the fact that the flow into this country is such a large scale, Even state troopers in the jurisdictions work to identify drug trafficking shipments that come across into their jurisdictions. So it's a pretty tough thing. But there are two problems. Number one, there's not enough people. Now, Congress just passed some legislation most recently that was reluctantly signed by the president to provide more funding for the organizations and law enforcement in terms of dealing with the drug cartels. And so it is very difficult. And I have already gone on record, and many of us, talking about the fact that because of the money that's involved, there's so much money involved that it's hard for the government agencies to stop these organizations from operating, because people, find themselves willing to do almost anything for money. And so, again, if you do your research, and many of you have written some really good papers in the past, but this week as you prepare your papers, pay close attention to the fact that there are multiple agencies that I mentioned that are working with the various foreign governments to try to stop this. But because there is so much money involved, lots of cash that passes hands. And now we're talking about here, not at the local level. We're talking about the flow. If you were able to cut the flow off, then what is in the country will dry up. So because of the fact that the organizations that are cartels are so organized, they use terroristic tactics to keep themselves in operations. They have people that actually are from, like, for example, Mexico or from Latin America that will bring drugs into the country, and if they don't do it, the cartels will go back and terrorize and kill their families. So it's like a duress situation where they're forced to commit these crimes. And so, people are talking about Mexico, but China, especially with these synthetic drugs, it says that some manufacturers are adding fentanyl and cafetani to heroin powder that's sold on the street. And so this synthetic drug is very difficult to battle. And a lot of doctors are letting us know that there are things that are being mixed with heroin to cause people to have trips, like LSD back in the 60s. And so it is very bad. So it's not pure heroin that these people are taking in. They're mixing it with fentanyl is a powerful sedative used for large animals like elephants. So think about that going into your body. And so there's a lot of mind-altering issues. So again, I just wanted to leave you with that before we get to talking about one of the things that's very serious. So with all of that having been said before, law enforcement has reached a stage where they recognize that we're at an epidemic stage. In other words, there's so many drugs and they keep coming in. And it's like when they plug up a hole, then they find another way to come in, as I said, coming in with tunnels. And so we have a very serious heroin epidemic that deals with opioids, where opioids dealing with painkillers and things like that, and they have just been mixed together and are poisonous to individual. And these substances are injected into the bodies of people, and again, it takes them on mind trips. So one of the things that we have that now is used is called Narcan. It's a naloxone, a prescription drug. It's supposed to stop when a person overdoses. And what it does is it brings them back to life. The only problem is that first of all, it's an expensive drug. And secondly, that if you don't get to a person in time enough, then that person will surely die. And it says here, and in 2015, the nasal application for naloxone avoid the need for Narcan, so from injection. And it's easier for first responders. But the point of the matter is once again, we've got a long ways to go, and what they're really doing is trying to help law enforcement to reach people who are actually pretty sick and who have used it. And so we're going to take a few minutes, and we're going to go over a video in just a second called Chasing the Dragon. But, and I may not show you the whole thing, but you can take a look at it yourself. But I do want to bring to your attention that there is a response that Illinois has, and it's Senate Bill 3023, which law enforcement is called the Community Law Enforcement Partnership for Deflection and Substance Use Disorder Treatment Act. And what that means with deflection is that police officers are ones who are on the front line. Traditionally, what has happened with law enforcement is when someone is involved with substance use, they either arrest them or not arrest them. But what deflection does, it provides another option, which I think is a better option, to connect these people with community-based substance use services that address their underlying substance use problems. In other words, rather than to lock people up, recognizing the health aspects of it and to treat it as a health epidemic is to lead individuals who actually end up coming into the departments to turn themselves in without being prosecuted. So it lays deflections. Senate Bill 3023 lays out a deflection program, types, and their key features offering guidance and range of options to municipalities in the state of Illinois now. We're hoping that other jurisdictions will pick this up and lead to more help. Modeled after the Good Samaritan protection for police and emergency responders with regard for the use of opioid overdose antidote naloxone, this law provides immunity from civil liability to law enforcement officers who use this in good faith to help individuals. And it is a law that is voluntary. Now, it does not require that law enforcement agencies create deflection programs, but it does encourage them to do so. Just a few statistics, and I'm going to send you this again. The number of overdose deaths from all opioids increased by 82% in the last 3 years. So opioid drug overdoses killed more than 45% or more people than even homicides. Opioid overdose killed 25% more than motor vehicle crashes. Opioid drug overdoses kill more people than people who died due to all gun-related causes, including homicide, suicide, and accidental shootings. So opioid issues have reached a stage where it's not just urban, but it's suburban and rural problems. In other words, it's everywhere. And these are statistics that are from the Illinois Department of Public Health that you'll have a chance to have access to. There are many agencies that are involved with this in terms of law enforcement agencies. There are many departments all over the state of Illinois that are involved with this, and they've partnered with the state's attorneys, the prosecutors, and the jurisdictions. So the key thing is not to lock these people up. And again, I will send you a copy of this and attach it. Matter of fact, I'll attach it to the email when I send you the archive after this is over. So in the meantime, let's take a little bit of time and let's look at this this video, which I'm going to take my headset because you won't be able to hear it. Okay, you should be able to hear it then. All right. It's only...
Prescription pills and opiates has definitely become an increasing problem that we see, not only involving the crimes to investigate actual drug diversion, but it involves other things too. People start committing other crimes when they start seeing just, the need that they have to get these drugs. I think the worst part of it is that starting at, kids at a very young age, kids that are, middle school even are starting to find out what these pills are, and they might think it's fun at first. And then, you talk to them a year or 2 years later and you realize it's a different story. I mean, so, just the degree that people go to get these pills is insane. I mean, I've seen people that drive 7 hours one way every month each way, so that's a 14-hour round trip just to get these pills because, though you need a job, you can't work your job anymore because all you care about is, driving up to get these pills. And, I mean, your life is over because all you can focus on is how do I get these drugs.
We've done search warrants in huge homes, multi-million-dollar houses, fancy cars, and we've done search warrants in houses where there's no food in the refrigerators. I remember one individual subject, I had arrested his mother and his father, and also arrested him. He was injecting OxyContin, as many as 35 a day, intravenously, and he was using creek water just out of a local stream because he was living out in the woods.
Everybody thinks they pop a few pills, it's no big deal. You young kids out there, you better just be very, very aware of what's going on with these pills. You can get addicted with one pill, and for the rest of your life, it will absolutely ruin you. It doesn't discriminate against you young or old, or you're black, or you're white, or you're male, or you're a female. I've arrested from 12 years old to 86 years old. I've arrested grandma and grandpa. I've arrested the young boy that takes the pills from his parents' cabinet and takes them to school and gives them to some other kids in school. When somebody gets sick, gets rushed to the hospital, and thank God doesn't die. I've worked probably at least 24 overdose deaths that are 100% related to prescription meds where it's too late, they're already dead.
A lot of students went down the road, a lot of young people go down the road of trying to drug for recreational purposes, and they don't understand the devastation that it has to their own life and the lives of their parents. I should add the victims of the crime include infants. We have had subjects who were pregnant women who gave birth to oxycodone, opiate-addicted babies and infants. They even had a baby in jail, and it's a growing problem as well.
A lot of overdoses, a lot of deaths. Scary thing is it's getting younger and younger. It used to be the heroin overdoses seemed like they were all adults. Lately they've been getting younger and younger, low 20s, even into their high teens. I've talked to hundreds of heroin addicts or opiate addicts, and they all tell me the same thing. If they could do one thing different, they never would have started in the first place. That's their they started when they were young, and once you're an addict for life, and best way to avoid that is just to never do it.
We're seeing a dramatic shift in how it's affecting the lives of young people. They're experimenting with friends at parties, and they think it's safe to take pills from the medicine cabinet or a friend. And during the 1 week period, we had 9 fatal overdoses in a 3-jurisdiction area. And over the Christmas holiday, I read 2 obituaries of people that I had arrested for prescription fraud and related offenses. Their parents buried them. They were young, 20-some years old.
So it's really a very serious problem, as you can see, and you see that people are dying at an early age, and that it's just the law enforcement angle is to try to not, as I said, when we talk about Senate Bill 3023, and you can research that, do some research on that. Maybe you can include that in your paper as to where it is now, because I haven't had a chance to take a look at it to see where it is now. This is from late last year when I got this information when I attended a seminar that I attend every year for the Illinois Chiefs of Police. And it just indicates the recognition that law enforcement is giving public service announcements, is just saying, just don't do it. And it shows you how you can innocently get caught in it. And so law enforcement response, I like that. I would like to see it more widespread. As I said before, and I've gone on record many times as saying that there is a correlation between crime and drugs, and that if you have a person who convicts a crime, you will oftentimes discover that the reason they committed that crime is because of the fact that they were on drugs and they were trying to support that habit. And so now with this opioid and heroin epidemic, it's gotten even worse. I shared before with you guys that I had clients, or one that always sticks out in my mind of a young man who had a problem with drugs, heroin and cocaine, and he caught many cases, and finally I became his lawyer, and I usually tell families to make sure they post bond for an individual to get them out. But in this situation, because I saw what was going on here and I saw a pattern, I said, you're going to create a problem for this young man if you get him out. It is better for him to stay in there because he's going to need some very intense help. Well, sure enough, they bailed him out. And within a short period of time, maybe a few days even, the young man got out of the house, attempted to commit a burglary, ran across a highway, major freeway in Illinois, and the police chased him. He tried to backtrack, going back over that highway, and didn't make it. He was hit by several vehicles and was killed instantly on the highway. And so his death is attributed to drug use and not the crime of burglary, but you have to get to the core. So what am I saying is that it is important that we work very diligently to provide benefits that will help individuals to get the monkey off their back, to kick the habit, and that law enforcement moving in that direction, which is what this deflection program that I'm talking about is an example. And when it says deflection, what it means is You go in, you turn yourself in, all right? If you know you're going to go in and you're going to be able to get some help, then you're going to more likely turn yourself in. But if you're going to go in and you're going to be prosecuted for the possession of the drugs and all of these different things, you're not going to do it. And so when law enforcement then will come in contact with you is when you get arrested for committing a crime. And sometimes it ends up in you're not getting arrested, but it costs you your life. So it is beneficial to us in our communities for law enforcement to continue to move forward with these programs. And so I'm going to end this session, and I'm going to give you a key phrase I want you to use in this to get points, and it's SB 3023. You know what that's about because I've talked about it. SB, S as in Sam, B as in boy, 3023. And I will be sending you this shortly along with a copy of this paper, and then you can do some research on it as well. All right, so I'm going to say good night to you and end this session.